Welcome to the UNISA Gauteng Region Counseling Unit podcast for the month with the theme of creating a safe place through hope and action. On the line, we have our student counselor, Mr. Fatwani Makahani, and our senior student counselor, Dr. Nono Tipe, who will be discussing the National Suicide Prevention Awareness Month. Before moving further, I would like us to unpack what suicide is.
Yes, colleagues and our fellow students, I think one need to remember the issue of suicide is not an easy word to start with, to begin with. Suicide, as she has asked Manthe, is a killing of self, a self-killing, by the way. In other words, no one is involved in your killing. However, we could say somebody is involved in the sense that sometimes you find that there are some aspect of your life that has been contributed by somebody else, which has made you to end up committing suicide, which means that terminating your life unexpectedly. Some people leave notes of what happened before then. Some are stressed, some are depressed. But I think for this information, we're going to look at depression as one of the major cause of suicide. However, I will hear from my colleague, Dr. Tipe, what is her take on that regard. But I know suicide is about ending one's life by self without involving anyone. However, there might be aspects from other people which might have led somebody to lead to that aspect of committing suicide. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Makahani. Just to add on what you are saying, you are very correct, especially when you mention that usually people who go this route of intentionally taking their lives are really bothered by depression. Depression usually comes at the fore of those who commit suicide. I also want to just add to saying there are two types of this suicidal attempt or the actual act. One is passive suicide. It's passive suicidal thoughts. Remember, it starts as a thought. People don't just wake up and then they commit suicide, execute the act of taking their lives without having thought about it first. Usually it's passive suicidal thought and active suicidal thought. Passive suicidal thought is, for example, somebody who starts to think that my life is not worth it. I don't know the meaning of life. What am I doing here? Life doesn't have a meaning. I don't have a purpose. But they actually, we call it passive because they actually don't have a plan of how they will execute this plan of taking their lives. They haven't really thought it through. But the active suicidal thought, on the other hand, is when somebody has a plan, they think it through, they think of options they have. When are they going to do this thing? How are they going to do it? Are they going to tell somebody? Are they going to write a note? They really sit with these thoughts, and sometimes they execute the plan, and sometimes they don't. That is the difference between active and passive suicidal thinking. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for your contributions. Just before we move on to what National Suicide Prevention Month is and its importance, I would like to hear from both of you. What is the stigma surrounding this particular topic?
When it comes to stigmas, people, there's always, when you are not in the situation, it's easy to say, no, this person could have waited because the problems don't last forever. Sometimes they are seen as weak. So most of the times they are seen as cowards. So that is the stigma around suicide. They are labeled as weak and not being able to face life head on.
Yes, doctor. I think you are definitely correct. Those who are remaining behind, they've got a lot of questions around what is the cause of them ending their lives without talking to us and so on. And it's not a matter of blaming them because sometimes you have seen the the symptoms, because a person who commits suicide, most of the time they do not share, they just do it. They've got their thoughts already and they do it. Those who come out and share, they are more likely not to commit suicide. So therefore, we are not there to blame them and trying to check what caused them to commit suicide. That's why we need to know exactly what is causing them to commit suicide so that we can prevent it to happen. So it's important for us to consider that there are many aspects in life that can lead them to commit suicide. So therefore, blaming them and thinking that they're weak and so on without knowing what they're going through is a problem in itself. That is why sometimes they go into the website and look on the best way to commit suicide without much pain. So therefore, we need to look at those aspects and to monitor that. That's why at the end of the day, we need to have somebody who is closer to them who can then assist them to communicate with them so that we can eradicate the thoughts of thinking about ending their lives. I think Dr. has put it so well in the sense that these people, they cannot be blamed. And as such, also, we cannot blame ourselves because sometimes we don't have necessary skills which are needed to identify individuals who are suffering from depression, individuals suffering from anxiety, and so on. So therefore, those are the aspects that need intervention from the qualified personnel, which we'll discuss it later. Who do you go to when you face a situation like this, or do you refer to when you see somebody going through the most in life? Thank you.
Thank you so much. With the next question being, why is the National Suicide Prevention Awareness Month so important, both for an individual and for collaborative efforts, meaning for us as the counseling unit, why is it important that we promote National Suicide Prevention Awareness Month?
It is very important for us as a counseling unit because at the top of what we do, it's making sure that our students are mentally healthy. That's number one, so that we avoid dropout, we avoid them not finishing their qualifications, but most importantly, just for their well-being at the top of the list, and also to help them help others out there who might not be privy, who might not have the advantage of getting information such as this from institutions like UNISA. Also to sort of have ways to avoid falling into the trap of being suicidal, because when we talk about it and we raise awareness about it, we might help somebody who is contemplating suicide to feel at ease to come and talk to us as counselors of student support at the university. So that it becomes very, very important in that regard, and because to be honest, suicidal stats South Africa will tell you that pretty much plus minus 3,000 people commit suicide daily in South Africa. And that's about 1 million people commit suicide a year. So that is a disturbing number. And we also know that, according to the study, that there is a growing number of people who are committing suicide among Black youth. And most of those Black youth are found in universities. So it's very important to raise awareness in that regard so that people can know that we are here, we exist, we have created a safe environment where they can come and be themselves without anybody judging them, to seek professional help, because Student Support Directorate for Career Counseling and Development at UNISA is full of professionals who are registered with the Health Profession Council of South Africa, the HPCSA. We have registered counselors, we have registered psychologists, clinical psychologists, educational psychologists, counseling psychologists, research psychologists are there, even industrial psychologists are there. So we need to raise this awareness to make people aware, especially as students, that we are here for them. Thank you.
Yes, I think
Mr.
Dr. has put
Makhanda?
it so well. Yeah, I think Dr. has put it so well. Sometimes it's a lack of knowledge of where to go to when you are faced with challenges in life. So as for our students, I think they've got a leeway because we have got a counseling department, as a doctor has put it already. We have got counseling department in all centers around the all provinces, right? So whereby our students are allowed to go there for free. I think these services are free of charge. I don't think it's in fact free of charge. So sometimes it's a lack of knowledge that there is somewhere where any help can come from. So therefore, we have got qualified, trained professionals, psychologists, clinical psychologists, educational psychologists, counseling psychologists in the process who can help on the reduction of this kind of suicide thoughts and so on. So therefore, our students, it's all about to our students, wherein we make our awareness every day, so that they must know our availability. They must also know where we are situated, so that they can use our services for their own benefit. In other words, sometimes we find out that maybe perhaps it's a lack of information of where to go to when we are faced with such kind of challenges. In this regard, I think Doctor has put it that once they start to understand that we are there for them, and the services are at hand, then it will become easier for them to continuously visit our services, and then we talk about things that is challenging them. So she has also given us a stats, all right? That's very important, because if we don't know exactly what is happening, we are more likely to take it for granted. That is a big number, 1 million in the whole world or so. It's a lot of number, because one has to think, if there has been an intervention wherein they speak to someone, they can also speak to their friends and so on when they find that the going is getting tough. But also we prefer them, as for our students, we prefer them to speak to us, because we render these services free of charge as part of the package when they register. So maybe sometimes we must also continuously insist on doing awareness, so that they will understand what is happening and what is there in their disposal, because these are the services that can help them. And then it becomes a ripple effect, because once we help one person, they go and inform others that there is help when they identify things like those, when somebody's suffering from depression. Yes, counseling, we also have that in our website. We have got our contact number, our email address, our booking. We can do those also online. We can also do that face to face, which depends on the level of the individual, whether they can be able to come to our center. So if they can't, then we still have those kind of services. I think it's important for them to know that services at hand, and they can get that easily. Thank you very much.
My next question would be, what are some of the objectives we can set out as the Gauteng Counseling Unit to prevent suicide?
Can you repeat the question of objectives for?
The objectives that we can set out as the counseling unit to help prevent suicide.
Yes, I think we have got a dedicated team of psychologists and dedicated team of counselors. All of them, they are trained, and they are registered under HPCSA, which is the board which is responsible for monitoring whether they are still doing things according to the way they have been trained. So therefore, the objectives here within UNISA and the counselors that we have a zero tolerance to suicide. We don't want to hear any of our students committing suicide, and we know depression is normal, because we are coming from a situation whereby the country was going through, the whole world in fact was going through COVID-19 and so on. And so also we've got the financial problems, jobs are scarce and so on, and the people there's crime in the country and so on, violence in the country. So those can trigger depression. So therefore, what we need to do now, we know that depression can lead to suicide and so on, because a person is staying alone, thinking a lot of irrational thoughts and so on. So what we need to do, our target is to look at those who are depressed, and also have an awareness to target majority of people, because we cannot only go to individual, because some of them might be missed in the process. So to avoid that, we have got a target of having awareness to our students, whereby one of the awareness is this podcast that is going to be shared through YouTube to our students. Sometimes it can go through UNISA, my UNISA, so that all our students can come through, and then those who are going through something, they can then contact counseling. They can then ask in the online whether they can be able to see us in that regards. So having said that, there is a lot which is happening on the background, which are aimed at enhancing our students' success, because the bottom line is we want our students to be happy, to be able to go to the world of work when they are happy individuals. So it begins with us as UNISA, so that we curb this kind of demon, which is called suicide, which is going through depression and so on. So those are the kind of things that we are doing. So we also have a lot of workshops that we are running, which can also assist on the identification of mental issues which students are going through, so that we target those. Some of them is part of the things that we do in our daily lives. Some of them we target them so that we can be able to assist them optimally.
I think you said quite a mouthful there, Mr. Makahani. You know, at the top of the list is just to, like I said, promote therapeutic approaches, the services that are available to students that we are here, have a dialogue around this suicide and how we can prevent it, maybe workshop them. You know, when you talk about objectives, have workshops around that on a quarterly or annual basis, and also come up with strategies on, you know, point by point strategies on what can be done to prevent this suicide. And I will give those steps maybe towards the end of our dialogue, just to leave our students with something, and also to emphasize that it is preventable. Thank you, ma'am.
With regards to just the important thing that I think we should highlight as the counseling unit, what are the risk factors that are associated with suicide, and how can we maybe improve in terms of implementing training for risk identification?
I would say risk factors are issues such as substance abuse. When we have people deciding that they will resort to alcohol when they have challenges, instead of talking to a professional, you know, unnecessary risk-taking behavior, like just being promiscuous, for example, sleeping around to numb the pain of what somebody is going through. Sometimes you have people with chronic, numerous physical complaints. They never get healed, these people, regardless of what doctors are trying to do for them. You know, and this physical complaints are linked to emotional distress. Another risk factor is just the feeling of boredom, continuous boredom, feeling agitated, aggravated by situations. Mr. Makani said we are all hit hard by the COVID-19, and I know it left people devastated. Some people lost loved ones because of it. Some people had it themselves, had to go through it and heal through it. So there's agitation, there's nervousness, there's grief, you know, extended grief, sadness, there's hopelessness, amongst other things, you know, besides COVID, like you mentioned, there's other life challenges. There's loneliness for those who are missing, those who passed on. And then a loss of interest in usual activities, you know, which is another high risk sign of depression, you know. And if you lose interest in usual activities, definitely you might be losing interest in your studies, in your academics. So those are some of the risk factors that I wanted to talk about. Sleep patterns can be disturbed as well. You know, increased consumption of prescription drugs. You know, going to the doctor, getting prescription and overdosing on those medicine. It's one of the risk factors. Just stockpiling medicine, you know, medication, you buying this medication, or you having a sudden interest in firearms that you never had. And at the top of the risk is the attempt itself. Some people remember the attempt, especially those with active suicidal thoughts. So the attempt is also a very high risk. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I would like to know, how can we promote therapeutic approaches that are available for the students? Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much for that question. I think it has been partly answered, but let me start from maybe adding on what Dr. T has mentioned. The issue of substance abuse is a very serious issue. As you can see, our country, I don't know, sometimes when people are stressed or so on, or as a form of entertainment, they resort to alcohol. And alcohol abuse has risen so much, and we've got a lot of people who can become alcoholic and so on. That's why our health centers at the moment, they've got a lot of people who are visiting them. Either they've got liver problems and so on. So those aspects can also lead somebody to be stressed and be depressed, and therefore people can resort to depression. So when you talk about the issue of alcohol abuse or alcohol dependent, one also think about the codependency, because that alone, it affects the family as a whole. So one will also ask whether why we are most talking about depression instead of talking about something also such as a PTSD or post-traumatic stress disorder. The difference between the two is that in the PTSD, people do not kill themselves, all right? Depression, you are more likely to commit suicide. But in the PTSD, people rather kill others because they're scared to kill themselves. That's why you can hear in America somebody took a gun and shoot the whole school, or whatever the reason might be. Those are the symptoms of a violence in a society which has erupted and becomes the issue of PTSD. But as depression, as we always hear, we talk about depression, we talk about mental problems and so on. These are the main cause of the of committing suicide. Majority of people who are committing suicide, 80% or so, the stats can be verified, who have gone through depression are more likely to commit suicide. That's a fact. So therefore, when we go back to your question, it's also an aspect of looking at what are the available approaches that we have. As we have mentioned earlier, we have got a team of qualified personnel, the psychologists, the counselors, and so on. Those people, all of them, they are trained to deal with mental health issues. So issues which are beyond our control as a result of maybe we cannot deal with it due to the limited time, because we've got the majority of students who might be looking for our services. So we refer them outside our services. Like we have got team up with SADC, which are responsible for helping the whole country at no cost as well. So they can be, you can talk to them telephonically. Their telephone are also on the internet and so on. So we are teamed up with different organizations. Within UNISA itself, we try our level best to manage the symptoms of depression so that it can go down. Remember, once you are diagnosed with depression, we do not diagnose at UNISA. You need to see a clinical psychologist or you go to the doctor and then you team up with the doctor, because this become a teamwork whereby we when we are diagnosed with depression, it's a lifelong situation. It's two things. One, you need to be in medication, antidepressant, because it's chronic, right? Then at the same time, you must also be seeing a counselor whom you are going there to talk about issues that are happening, because it doesn't stop that you might be developing some other issues in the present of depression. That is one we speak about the comorbidity. In the present of depression, the other things comes in. Maybe you've got a physical illness and so on. So those aspects can also lead you to stress and to become more depressed, and then you decide to commit suicide. But as such, we have got a variety of therapeutic plan which we have within UNISA, different approaches that we are using, which cater for all individuals, all our students, including our staff as well. So we have those aspects. And we also have an EAP at UNISA, whereby if you feel like as a staff, because it's not only for students, even staff can go through this, they can approach our employee wellness program, whereby they can be assisted, because in our clinic, we have got qualified personnel as well. So it's a teamwork, it's a collaborative work. So one need not think that it's only a counseling in Pretoria that I can get services. It's only a Kurulina that can get services. All centers, as I repeat, you can get services which can help you to deal with the situation that we're going through.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Before we move on to the last segment of our podcast, I would like to find out from you, Dr. Nono Tipe. You mentioned that we could develop and implement strategies to prevent suicide. And thinking of such, I was thinking, by promoting healthy connections and identifying and supporting people at risk is what we can do at the minimal level. However, moving forward, what is it that we can do as part of the implementation to prevent suicide?
Okay.
Dr. Tipe?
All right. Thank you. First of all, you can also try to identify warning signs. You asked me about risks, and I tried to go one by one talking about risks. If we can have a list where we can make it very clear what the warning signs are, what goes on, obviously with the help of the counselor, what goes on when one starts to have suicidal thoughts. Do they think about much about buying a gun? Are they becoming impatient with family members? So you put there that if I'm that person who is suicidal, I can see that, oh, okay, I'm already having a sign because my thoughts are towards this. And on your list, if you just ask me what is going through your head, it's a question. If I see it on the board and it's visible when I get into your office or into your corridors at student support, I start to rethink my thoughts. Secondly, we can write down coping strategies. What are coping strategies? Things we can do on our own, things we like doing, things that give us pleasure, that can help me take my thoughts out of trying to take my life and how I'm going to do it. If I like to go to the park and feed the birds and the dove with seeds, buy seeds and go feed the dove. If I like to watch nice movies, dramatic movies or comedy, I do that. Something that doesn't come up with effort. If exercise is putting too much on you as well, maybe don't try to do exercising if it's difficult for you to get up for it. Do things that come easy, things that you love. Thirdly, we can identify social contacts and settings also that can distract us from this crisis of always having suicidal thoughts. Be around people that you like, people that make you happy. Find a place you can go to that makes you feel good. For example, mine is just in the stillness, where I go for meditation retreats, or even church, just to go and worship. If that's a place that makes me feel good, I can do that. And then when you go out with this social contact, at the beginning, you can make sure that it's a casual friend where you don't need to tell them much about what you are going through at first, if you can get away with it. But if you can't, you go to the fourth stage where you engage a family member or another friend. List them in the order of priority. Who do you trust to talk to about these thoughts that you have of taking your life? Identify a person. If it's a pastor that you trust, then go to them and tell them that you have these thoughts. If it's your parent, it's fine. If it's a best friend, a colleague, if you don't have, then come to talk to the therapist, because the therapist is a stranger who's not going to divulge your information to anybody else. And let them know that you are going through this destructive mode of thinking and you need their support. And then this is your network of support. On the fifth note, you can, like I said already, contact a professional. Have a list of these professionals, hotlines, local agent care centers with phone numbers, so that sometimes you don't feel like going to see somebody physically, then you can call. People are on smartphones these days. then you can contact these people. Sometimes they have a number where you can just text them with WhatsApp and you start talking with somebody on your phone, you know, at the leisure of your own privacy. And lastly, you can make your environment safe by getting rid of large bottles of medicine, you know, pills and stuff. If you're going through chronic illness, these people that you trust, family members or friends, give them the medicine, take only for 3 days, and only go back after 3 days and ask for more pills for 3 days. Don't find yourself surrounded by a lot of medicine. Get rid of guns and weapons around you, you know. If you have those weapons, just get rid of them completely for some time until you can feel yourself again. And this last step, you do it actually with all the other steps.
I agree entirely.
Yes.
And maybe to add on what Dr. T has mentioned, it's very important for you to look at because maybe perhaps I'm coming from the family therapy, whereby you need to look at the significant others who are very close to you, who can do as well as what Dr. T has mentioned, like keeping somebody who's going to be at check for you and all those things, who cares about you, so that you have that contact. Again, one also need to look at the issue of family dynamics, because sometimes it can be caused by other stressors within the family. The family members are not working, there are somebody who's alcoholic in a family, and so on and so on and so on. So all those aspects need to be dealt with as well, because even if you are helping a student who is only the one who shows those symptoms, but when she goes home or he goes home, everything starts from scratch again. Therefore, the environmental issues now comes into play, because those are the aspects which facilitate, or it becomes a precipitating factors which increase the likelihood of the depression and suicide to happen. So therefore, those aspects, when we're busy with our therapeutic approach and so on, we need to look at that, and who is the person staying with, what is the family setup at home, because we might be reaching the cul-de-sac or playing around the same place over and over again, which doesn't help much, because we need to help them entirely, and therefore we need to go beyond the university boundaries and look at the other aspect. If it needs referral for the family to go to see someone outside our spheres, let it be so, because if we are trying to help a student, and then it continuously happens, chances are there might be some problems in the family, and we need to probe deeper and try to understand what is happening within the family. So therefore, we can try to look at the structure of the family and so on, so that we can help entirely. This is very interesting in the sense that we cannot look at suicide in isolation, because there are some aspects which accompany it, which, as Dr. T has already mentioned and elaborated on them. So it's important for us to look at what is the stage of the person is, and what is the issue, because sometimes you find that depression, it came as a result of grieving during COVID-19 and so on and so on and so on. So those aspects need to be looked at. Were they helped when they were going through that? How do we help them now? Because missing that, it can lead to more problems which not be reversed. So that is why we are trying our level best as University of South Africa, through counseling department, to alleviate all aspects which can make students not to focus on their studies, which can lead students to suicide. So it's a zero tolerance, as we have mentioned earlier. We are not going to give up on that one. We are going to look at ways to cut suicide at all costs. So we need an environment whereby our students continue and complete their studies. We know there are some challenges which are beyond our control, like finances, nexus, and so on. But within our areas, we need to deal with the issues that we can be able to control. See things such as their mental health. This is important because their mental health is our concern. That is why immediately when a student register, it's important sometimes to go and see a counselor, even if there is nothing happening, just to come and discuss issues with us, because at times you may find out that some of the things you might not be aware of. We are stopping this to happen before it even happened. That is why we are being proactive as we are doing this podcast. I think this is one of the things that we are proud of, because the podcast is basically about proactive awareness, creating awareness as a form of preventing this to happen because we have got zero tolerance to suicide. I think that is where we are leading to.
Lastly, before we continue to the next question, I just wanted to add that there's also an important question that needs to be added on that list that can help somebody who is attempting or who has attempted or who has suicidal thoughts. This question is, they need to ask themselves, what is that one thing that is currently important in their lives that is helping them to stay alive? If they can answer this question, they must write it down and answer the question, why is it that important for them? What is that one thing in their lives that is important enough for them to stay alive? Because we need to remember that suicidal thoughts or suicidal attempt, they are impulsive. People think on an impulse, on how they feel at that time, and then they convince themselves that the situation would be much better if they kill themselves, or other people won't care even if I'm not here, and that is that is not really the truth, because we know as therapists, as professionals, that this is a distorted way of thinking in the moment, because the reality is that there is collateral damage from suicide that is very devastating for the ones that are left behind. It runs deep and very wide, this damage. It's like a bomb that just blasts and leaves a huge permanent damage behind. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Tipe. My follow-up question would be, since suicide doesn't only affect the person who has committed suicide, as you mentioned, it also affects their loved ones. So are there tools or strategies that are implemented that can also help the loved ones affected by the suicide? Thank you.
Most definitely. Hence, I said to you that as somebody walks through our corridors and they see this list and this preventative tool that we have come up with, they can go and educate others, especially family members and close friends. If it's hanging on the wall and it's in the form of a poster, they can take a picture and share it with others. So yeah, it's very, very helpful for everybody, either whether they're supporting the person who's suicidal or whether it's for the person who's suicidal themselves.
Thank you so much, Dr. Tipe. Just to close this off, it is quite important for those who are affected or who think might be affected to reach out and seek professional help. So with that being said, what are the suicide helplines that are available in South Africa that our students can contact when feeling helpless and in need of mental health assistance to be able to prevent suicidal thoughts?
Before we even talk about the hotlines and so on, I think the advice that we need to give our students and community at large, you do not need to diagnose yourself that you are depressed or you are going through suicide. You need to reach out so that we can identify really if you are going through that or you are depressed, because there's a lot of information in the internet that people can go through and then they diagnose themselves, and then as such they start to take medication without even having a clinical intervention. So it's important, don't diagnose yourself. Please visit the qualified personnel to do such if there's a need for diagnosis. Sometimes you are just going through stress. We all go through stress. There's no one who's immune to stress. So therefore, if you start by diagnosing yourself, you are more likely to make more damage to yourself than when you have consulted someone. This is important, and it needs to be taken into consideration because, one, even if we say go to SADC and so on, first thing first, you need to identify what you are going through, because no one knows what you are going through until you tell them. Even us who are not magicians, wherein we can just look at you in the eyes and say, you are so depressed, you know what? We don't work like that. There is some aspect, there are things that we do and some tests, in fact, sometimes when we run, which we run. Sometimes if it's not your area expertise, we transfer it to the relevant personnel and give them information what we have observed, so that they can work from that, so that they mustn't delay the process. So therefore, having said that, it's important for us to also note that I think we will also talk about the hotlines which are available. Like I've already mentioned that SADC has got the hotline as well. We'll give you those ones. So as such, I just wanted to give that part before we continue with giving the hotlines that students can go to, or the community at large can go to, or the family as well can try to link to, because we cannot lie. This is not a person. If I am the one who's going through this in a family, it affects the whole family, it affects the whole community. So therefore, we need to look at this strategically and help the whole community as such, because that is why there is an aspect of community psychology. Why? It is basically about making awareness to the community, so that they must know that this happens and this can be prevented using this and this and that. So therefore, as such, we will put, I think in the podcast, we're going to put up the numbers, the hotline numbers. I think, Mampe, you have got a duty now to put those hotline numbers, unless if you wanted us to just say this number and this company and this organization. But there are a lot of hotline like Lifeline and as well as SADC, which help the people to deal with their depression, anxiety, and so on. So I think as such, I will stop here for now until I hear my community colleagues to talk about it.
Thank you so much. I have projected the suicide helplines that are available in South Africa for our students to contact, and hope that this podcast reaches them in a very good way. And please take note that we are striving and thriving for you to be the best of what you can be. With that being said, any questions from you, Dr. Tipe, or rather a closing statement?
Just one. When you speak of the SADC suicide prevention line, I just thought we could just say it out loud, since this is a podcast. The telephone number there is 0800 567 567. 0800 567 567. Thank you. That's all from me.
Thank you so much, Dr. T. Mr. Makahani, any closing statement?
Thank you very much for the opportunity. I think our students should not wait to see Dr. T or Mr. Makahane or whoever, Dr. Pitwan, whoever whom we know around. Don't wait for that. Make a call. Make that call if you are going through something. Make that call. Arrange with them to see them as soon as possible, as soon as yesterday. If you cannot be able to reach us, go to those hotlines which are there. They also qualified personnel who can do better when you are at home. Even during the night, those ones, they are there to answer to your calls, because we sleep, but they have got shifts whereby they've got individuals who are dedicated to help you optimally. So I think this has come at the right time, because August was a Women Month, and also apart from Women Month, there's always been a whirlwind during August and September, whereby the mental health issues becoming a serious issue. So that is why the timing of the podcast was based on the fact that we need to have it during this time when we know that mental issues is at rife. So thank you very much for the time and opportunity. Looking forward to have some more podcasts like this. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. And with that said, I would like to thank each and every one of you for tuning in into our podcast. We thank you.